Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Corporate Roundtable podcast. I'm your host, Chairman of the Corporate Roundtable, Patrick Hanna. I am delighted to welcome my friend, and I'm biased, my fraternity brother, Dr. Perry Daniel, who is a member of our executive committee with Stride, formerly K-12. He's doing some amazing things. And so, Perry, welcome to the show. We're
Thank
so thankful that you would make the time out of your schedule this morning to be with us to connect with our members and our legislators in a meaningful way. But before you make remarks, let me tell a little bit about you. I know a lot about your work, but let me read this wonderful bio that you prepared, a little bit of it, so that our audience can have a lens of actually some of your experience. Dr. Perry Daniel is employed with Stride Learning, formerly K-12. He is currently representing Stride as a fellow for CEO Action for Racial Equity. Really excited about that. He previously served the company as Senior Director of School Partnerships and Compliance, Deputy Regional Vice President of School Services, and Head of School of Louisiana Virtual Charter Academy. Prior to joining K-12, he was employed as the principal of Prescott Middle, where he was recognized as Principal of the Year by the Advanced Baton Rouge Charter School Association in 2010. Before moving to Baton Rouge, Dr. Daniel worked as the principal of Bethune Middle Academy in Shreveport, Louisiana. He earned the school turnaround specialist credentials from the University of Virginia for his work at Bethune. He received his Bachelor of Arts from Dillard University, Master's of Arts from Canterbury College in Shreveport, and a Doctorate of Education from the Stephen F. Austin State University in Nacogdoches, Texas in 2007. He is married and the father of four children. He is a native of Griffin, Georgia. Please welcome Dr. Perry Daniel. Perry, how you doing this morning, man?
Man, I'm great. I'm great. I'll start with the end. I'm a native of Griffin, Georgia, man. I'm everything I am is because of what I experienced and what I learned and how I was nurtured in Griffin. I'm the youngest of 10 children from a large family. My father was the youngest boy of 18. Um, and family is the root. So growing up in Griffin, uh, things were a lot different than they are now, as you can imagine. Griffin is still a small town,
How far is
but
Griffin from Atlanta?
about 45 minutes.
Okay.
About 45 minutes, and I always tell people that great things come out of Griffin. Griffin is God's country.
Mm.
You know, there's actually what's funny. There's a letter circulating around the internet right now of a gentleman from Griffin that was denied entry into Emory Medical School in 1959. And it simply states that because you are a man of color, we cannot allow you admission to the medical school. And the gentleman was from Griffin, and it shows his address. He and is right around the corner from where I grew up. But it's just glad to say that I represent Griffin. I will always go back to say that I am who I am because of Griffin. My parents were my mother was a LPN nurse. My father didn't graduate from high school, went into the army. Entrepreneur, always had his own business, and but he had a high respect for education and educators. I lived in a house where the teachers could do no wrong, no matter what they said, they were always right.
Right, right. You trust that judgment. It wasn't a
Yeah,
question of, trust to verify, but it was like if the teacher said you did it, you did
you
it.
did it. Don't even think about coming home saying she's telling the story. No, no, that doesn't happen. Teachers don't do that. But he had a high respect for educators, and so I think that's what and I always loved interacting um, with children, and so I never had a challenge there. But I always respected my dad for his respect for educators, and I think that's why I wanted to go that route. But I realized early on in my career I didn't only want to be a teacher. I saw some things that I didn't think uh, was in the best interest of students. So early in my career, I had a desire to be a principal. I think someone told me one time, you gotta play by the rules until you can make the rules.
Right.
And so I realized that early in the game, and I think I started my master's program to get my principal certification after my first year teaching.
This was in public school. You taught public school first,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Right.
I started out as a traditional educator, man. I taught at Southwood High School in Shreveport. Taught and served as assistant basketball coach. Worked with the African American Studies program. I worked. I was a student council sponsor. Did a little bit of everything in those 4 or 5 years when I was in the classroom. And one of the one of the highlights, not only working with those young men on the basketball team, but as a student council sponsor, I had to we hosted a beauty pageant every year. So at that time, Southwood High School was majority white.
Mm.
And I mean, probably 70-30 majority white. So when you open up and say you're doing a beauty pageant and you're hosting a beauty pageant, I'm like, Patrick, I'm 26, 27 years old. I mean, no, at that time I was about 25. I was about 25,
Right.
26. Yeah, 25, 26. I started teaching at 23. So this is about 25, 26. I'm hosting a beauty pageant with 50 or 60 high school girls, and 90% of them are white. So I'm dealing with these white moms at an early age in my career and learning how they work
Mm.
and their mindsets, and learning how to deal with them. It's not a slight on white women, but I'm just saying learning to be able to deal with different types of people and realizing what was important to them. I think those types of conversations I had with those women, having to deal in those situations, helped prepare me for the rest of my career.
Hmm.
Um, Also, don't want to take away what I learned at Dillard University and the professors that instilled in me. Look, you have to be the best. You have to be prepared for your students. You have to be willing to work with students and their parents.
Right.
So all that led me to going into administration and eventually going back to work on my doctorate uh, at Stephen F. Austin and going into to serving as a principal. When I became a principal, I became a principal at an inner city school. Bethune was one of the most challenging schools in Shreveport,
Hmm.
and it was early in the game. I was a principal at maybe around what I was 27, 28 years old when I became a principal.
Wow.
I think probably no, I was right at 30. That's why I was right at 30 when I became a principal, and it was it was tough,
Yeah.
but I
Talk
was
about those.
great for me.
Yeah, talk about those experiences, Pierre, and how they really shaped you. You talk about, your time in a predominantly white school to being a principal at a school that had challenges to where you are today. How had those experiences shaped you into the career person you are today? And just talk a little bit about how that experience and what kind of thoughts you have related to what you learned early in your career and what you're doing now, and how is that sort of connected, if you can tie that together for us.
Well, specifically where we are now. Well, I'll say what kind of helped me is the fact that in working in the inner city, the who you work with the least fortunate, but you also realize that the people who, in some cases, who have the power to make the change,
Hmm.
don't live in the neighborhood where the challenges are, or don't actually see what those challenges are. So, in looking at taking that experience to where I am now, working with Stride, participating in the CEO Action of Racial Equity Fellowship, it gives me the confidence, first of all, to talk to anybody
Hmm.
and being able to cross over, whether we want to say racial lines in our work, sometimes party lines, and not having that, not being afraid to do that, but also keeping at the forefront what the real issues are
Right.
and,
Right.
and what the challenges are. So um, that is where. I think the work has prepared me to be able to be in the position I'm in now. It's about communication, establishing quality relationships, and being a man of your word. I think those are things that are important in any space,
Right.
and that's what my work is and my background and upbringing, all those things come into play. I think often about my dad. When I tell you my dad was an entrepreneur, he owned a pool room,
Mm,
and all types of individuals came into the pool room.
right.
Good guys, you had the deacons, you had the street walkers, you had the cab drivers, you had the postmen, you had everybody came
He
into
knew
the pool room.
everybody. Right. He knew
Yeah,
everybody when it
yeah,
comes
everybody came into the pool room.
came
So
to the pool room. That's where you probably it's kind of like it's a safe space. It's like a barbershop. You can talk.
yeah,
It doesn't really matter what your credentials are, but it's good to have people in there for all walks of life. And those
yeah,
experiences obviously shaped you into the man you are today. Perry,
yeah.
what I want to do is kind of turn our attention to the present. Like, what are some of the things that you enjoy about being a member of a corporate roundtable, and what are some of the things that you think we can do to continue to add value for our members? And then finally, talk a little bit about the CEO initiative. What are some of your mandates and objectives with that particular program? So you can take those in any order.
Okay.
We kind of bring it to present day. I think our audience would love to hear about just how this ties into corporate roundtable, your CEO initiative, and how this can help our legislators in particular.
Okay. Well, I'll start with the benefit of being a member of the corporate roundtable, which I think is the most important thing I can talk about now. I think it is key for what has happened in my work with Stride and being a part of the corporate roundtable is that there are in our work, and I'm sure in the work of some of the other members of the corporate roundtable, there are challenges throughout your work or throughout your in the different places that you may work where you can't get it done by yourself. And what the corporate roundtable has allowed for us as members is being able to talk to legislators, having access to legislators to get their opinions on the work we're trying to do.
Mhm.
And I think that's invaluable because they know where the barriers are in their state. They truly know the lay of the land.
Mhm.
And if I can go and have a conversation with a state legislator that can be honest with me because we have established a relationship, they've seen me, they've talked to me, they've shared what they're doing in education, they've questioned what we're doing as Strive,
Mm.
and for us to, and being honest with them about that. So the value has come for us is being able to have access to legislators.
Sure, sure.
And,
It's
and that,
incredible. It's
yeah,
incredible.
that is the, if nothing else, that is truly worth the dues because they're one and not only having access, but you're establishing relationships with them as well. Because they will come to you and say, hey, I noticed that your company does this, this, and this. I'm really trying to do this in my district. Can
Mhm.
you all help me? So it becomes a two-way street, but the initial value is truly in the access.
Sure, without a
And
doubt.
yeah, that is, and I don't know if everybody sees it that way, but for us, that is truly a value for us and is worth every penny.
Without a doubt, without a doubt, Perry. It's so funny you say that. I had a session with President Billy Mitchell from Georgia, who, as you know, is the president of NBCSL, and that was one of the themes that the president mentioned, that it is about relationships. And so I'm really excited about working with President Mitchell. The CRT Executive Committee is really in a good place right now. I think we've got one of the most talented executive committees that I've ever had a chance to be associated with. But what you just said is spot on with what the president is focusing on during his term as president. So thanks for that. Tell me about the
Yeah.
CEO initiative. Congratulations to you and being selected to that. Obviously, that's a milestone. But for those of us that don't work in this particular space, tell me how that. What's the mandate of the work? How did you get from how is it connected to what we're talking about today? But in particularly, what is the goal? What are the goals and objectives of this initiative?
Okay, so CEO Action for Racial Equity is a organization that has probably over 100 companies that are signed off on allowing their employees or one or two employees to participate in this fellowship. But I'll take it back a step and say CEO Action for Diversity and Inclusion is about 1,500 organizations that have signed a pledge stating that they will provide a more inclusive workspace.
And this is not just education.
No. If you go to ceoaction.com, you can see the list of companies that are considered signatories. They're using their platform to mobilize the business community across various industries and various regions. But the key of the fellowship is to, and I'll just share the mission, is to identify, develop, and promote scalable and sustainable public policies and corporate engagement strategies that will address systemic racism, social injustice, and improve societal well-being. And to be very very blunt, those things will improve the lives of Black people. And that is a part of our work, is that we want to see these barriers of racism and injustice broken down. And I don't think that it can be done without establishing policy and establishing some social contracts between private and public entities, or companies and other organizations working together to establish these things. But the focus of the fellowship is in 4 areas really: education, economic empowerment, healthcare, and public safety. So
got it.
And it
very
is
important, very important pillars, and something that we all recognize is dealing with breaking down these barriers is how we need to come together collectively, which is something that President Mitchell is recognizing, that the economic disparity discussion, as we've gone through, emancipation to Jim Crow to civil rights to voting rights, we still have so much to deal with, but dealing with the economic disparities is one of the things that I think that really needs to be addressed. And so I'm glad that you all are leaning in on that. Well, Dr. Daniel, we're coming to a close, but before we close, any final thoughts and words of encouragement to our members? As you know, we've grown the Corporate Roundtable from 70 companies to 105 companies. NBCSL represents over 700 state legislators that represent over 70 million constituents in the United States. And so you are on the executive committee for the Corporate Roundtable. Any final thoughts for the legislators, things that you'd like to share with them or our members before we close?
I think the key is finding a way to identify the people in the network, connecting with the people in the network, and letting the network work for the various missions that we have, whether it's be in our companies or with the legislators. So identifying who's in the network, connecting with those individuals, and working together to make the world a better place, particularly supporting and helping those that the state legislators represent. So I think that's the best way to look at it.
I love it. Identify, connect, and let's make it better. That's a great way to close. Well, Dr. Perry Daniel, thank you so much for all that you do. We are delighted to have you part of the Corporate Roundtable, and thank you for being a part of the podcast today. Have a great day.
Thank you.